And our word for today, persisted. And here to talk about it, Shayne Stanfield. Good morning, Shayne.
Hey, Shayne.
Morning, guys. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, sir.
So the word is persisted. We read, of course, how Abraham persisted with the Lord in the form of intercessory prayer for others. He was essentially repeatedly asking for greater and greater mercy to spare the whole city for the sake of a decreasing but certain number of righteous people that might be living there. Each time his prayers were positively answered as he dwindled that potential number of righteous people down from 50 to 45 and then on to 40 and 30 and 20 and finally 10. But doesn't it seem a bit strange that he stopped at 10? Why not ask to spare the city for the sake of 5 or even a single righteous individual? We know from earlier readings that Abraham was aware that his nephew Lot had settled there, and he was likely doing all of this out of specific concern for him. It seems to me that Abraham might have begun to feel that he was starting to push his luck, so to speak, in testing the Lord with his mercy. It is clear that he was trying to remain respectful in his boldness, so it's also possible that he thought he would stop to avoid showing disrespect. We really don't know what was going on in the mind of Abraham, but it's clear that we get no sense of frustration or anger in any of the Lord's replies. In fact, the manner in which the Lord replies each and every time does more than suggest that Abraham could have easily continued reducing his numbers even by single digits. It actually helps to affirm what we already know. God is love, and love is patient, and love is kind. Of course, Abraham did know this, and he certainly did know about the infinite depths of God's mercy. Perhaps he stopped with his prayers of intercession because he simply thought that saving 10 was merciful enough. So let's look at the rest of the story from Abraham's perspective. We actually read tomorrow that Abraham returned to the place that he encountered the Lord only to see the smoldering ruins of the city the day after it was destroyed. What now do you suspect was going on in the mind of Abraham? Perhaps the Lord's final reply to him, "For the sake of those 10, I will not destroy it." Based upon that, Abraham should have trusted that at least 10 righteous people were not found to be there. But do you suppose that he may have begun to doubt the efficacy of his prayer? He was mistakenly attempting to quantify God's mercy, so it's quite possible that he may have regretted not asking to spare the city for just one righteous individual. Remember that he was likely concerned for his nephew Lot, and seeing the ruins could have easily caused him to conclude that even Lot was not spared. Of course, we know that Lot and his family were spared, and we also read tomorrow that they were spared specifically because of Abram's prayers. Yes, you heard that correctly. Abraham's prayers really were answered despite however flawed they were. But how is that? Abraham persisted in all accounts, asking for the city to be spared for the sake of the righteous, and yet the city was still destroyed. Well, God knew that he would not find the numbers of righteous ones in the city that Abraham specified. God also knew that Lot and his family only totaled 4, and that the city could not be spared specifically for their sake. We will read tomorrow just how bad this place was, and that Lot and his family really needed to be living someplace else. These are things that Abraham didn't know, but God also knew that Abraham persisted only because he wanted what was best for Lot and his family. The key here is to always be persistent in prayer, just as Abraham persisted in prayer, even if it appears that those prayers are not being answered. We need to do so trusting that God is doing something with that prayer, and whatever that might be, is truly for the best, even if it doesn't align with what we think is best. Remember, always be persistent in prayer.
Amen to that. And look, if you become familiar with the story, you see Sodom and Gomorrah was a really, really bad place. So
it gets rather graphic tomorrow.
Yeah.
It does. It's awful.
Even before, I mean, the explanation of what was going on there. Obviously, if that were allowed to continue unabated, who knows the effect that would have had on the world, continue to have as it grew out. And God was actually acting in mercy to remove that so his children would have an opportunity to grow without that.
Absolutely.
But it's hard. But we're still called to pray.
That's right.
Just like Abraham did.
Yeah.
Persistently.
Maybe one more time.
Yep. Be persistent. Be persistent in prayer.
Okay. Thank you, Shayne.
Thank you.
We'll be right back here on Morning Offering.